In this lecture, we're going to be looking at the sociological debate surrounding value freedom. We're going to look at some of the arguments that suggest that sociology should and can be value free. We're going to look at the opposite end of the spectrum, where you have sociologists who say that sociology cannot and should not be value free. And then we'll look at the middling arguments that say, well, there are elements that can be and there are elements that can't be. But before we get started, we need to really know what we mean when we're talking about values. And what we mean by sociological values what we mean by values in sociological research is that the beliefs, opinions, prejudices, preconceived ideas that everyone holds and how they are influenced by the social structures we belong to. But in terms of research, we're looking at how they shape the research that we do, how we interpret data, how we choose the methodological approach that we choose. So we're looking here really at how those beliefs, opinions, prejudices and preconceived ideas, which come from our social structures that we belong to, shape the research that we do and whether or not it should or shouldn't be the case. Now, as you can imagine, the positivists say that sociology should be value free. They argue that that values have no place in sociological research. And just like the natural sciences, sociologists need to be objective and they need to be detached from what they are studying, because what they're trying to do is uncover social facts. They're trying to find out the rules of behaviour, the rules of society. What keeps us doing what we do? Why do we behave the way that we behave? And we need to do that. In order to do that, we need to be objective about it. We need to stand back from society, be external to it, so that we can see what's happening within it. And to do that, they tend to use methodologies that are more quantitative in nature. They will use official statistics, closed questionnaires, structured interviews, methodologies that create quantitative data but are also highly reliable and have high validity in terms of accuracy. They argue that when you're trying to get depth of data, that's where interpretation comes in. It's where you start seeing more value-laden approach, and that means that you are then not uncovering the social facts of society. You are interpreting society rather than reporting on what is actually happening. So as I said, they suggest that sociologists should remain objective by being neutral, by not allowing their values to shape their research, to shape their understanding or the conclusions that they draw. Now, as an evaluation point here, you can say that's kind of contradictory, because by having these beliefs, they are actually showing their values, and therefore values come into sociological research. By believing that sociology should be approached in the same way as the natural sciences, that is a belief. That is a preconceived idea about what sociology is. So therefore, they are contradicting themselves. They are allowing their values to shape their research and their conclusions while saying that they shouldn't. Okay. We then go to the completely opposite end of the spectrum. Now, if we go to the complete other end of the spectrum, we're looking at the value-laden approach. And the value-laden approach comes from a sociologist called Gomm, G-O-M-M, and he argues that value freedom in sociology is impossible, and the very idea of being value-free is unsociological. So he argues that sociologists react to political, economic and social events. So when they're choosing their topic, they're looking at what is happening in the world around them, and that is based on values, and because it's what is seen as an important social issue that needs, or problem that is needing to be researched. And whether it be the sociologists themselves who determine what is a social problem, or whether it be the political system or society, there's still that value there in determining what it is that the sociologist is looking at. So one of the key ways that sociology cannot be value free is in their choice of subject. So Gom argues it's not just about looking at what sociologists do investigate, it's also important to look at what they don't investigate. What is it that they are determining to be unimportant to social research? Gom also argues that the methodological choices chosen by a sociologist indicate their beliefs and their values, whether or not they're going for more quantitative data, such as the positivists, or more qualitative data, such as the interpretivists. Are they looking at depth of data over accuracy? Are they looking at validity over reliability? The choices that they make in terms of how they conduct their research are an indicator of a sociologist's values. And then you've got funding, and the source of funding that the researcher has in order to complete their research may also have an impact on their approach. So it may not be their own personal values that shape their research. It may be the funding body that shapes their research and how they conduct their research. So for Gom and the value-laden sociologists, they're arguing that it is impossible for sociologists to be value-free, and in fact they shouldn't even try to be. So we'll have a look more at the more middling ground. Also to that end of the spectrum is the committed sociology approach, who argue that sociology should not try to be value-free. They're not saying it can't be value-free, they're saying it shouldn't even try to be value-free. And in fact, sociologists should just spell out their values in their research, be open about them, and take sides and espouse the values and interests of certain groups. And we can see this particularly with the feminists, who are pretty much entirely value-based, and their research espouses their values and their political opinions in order to make the world better. Feminists are very clear that when they're conducting their research, they are looking at how the world is patriarchal, how society is patriarchal, and what can be done to create more equality between the genders. And it's this value, this drive to create equality that really shows what their values are. So it's not that they are trying to be value-free, or that they believe that sociology should be value-free. The feminists are entirely value-based, showing that you can be a sociologist and still be open and be proud of the values that shape your research. Now, Goldner says that value-free sociology is impossible. Similar to GOM, it's not possible to be value-free. So why even try? He argues that it's impossible because sociologists' own values, or those of the people who are funding their research, what he refers to as their paymasters, are inevitably going to be reflected in their research. So why fight against it? Just accept it and kind of be honest about it. So when a sociologist, maybe an individual sociologist, is looking at a particular area because it's something that they experienced as a child themselves, or that they have a personal interest in for some reason, be honest about it. Don't put up a front of neutrality when the neutrality is not even there. And particularly when it comes to things like your choice of research, accept the fact that whether you are positivist or interpretivist or somewhere in between, your values as to which way you shape your research are going to be obvious. So just accept it. Goldner also says that value-free sociology is undesirable, since if we were completely value-free, essentially all a sociologist would be doing is simply selling their services to the highest bidder. By rejecting certain research opportunities, by rejecting certain research funding streams, a sociologist is already showing their values. Not accepting funding from particular charities or companies or political groups, pressure groups, etc. A sociologist is clearly showing their values and what they believe in. So for Goldner, it's not about trying to be value-free or putting up a veil of value freedom. For him, it is a case of don't try to be value-free and just accept that your values are going to influence your research. Becker, however, talks about taking the side of the underdog. He argues that it's inevitable for a sociologist to take sides. Feminists take sides in terms of gender differences. If you're looking at single parents, maybe you're more new right in your thinking, so you're going to be anti-single parent, or maybe you're more postmodernist, for example, and are more likely to take the side of the single parent. But Becker argues that the inevitability of sociologists to take sides, and that shows that there is values in research. And he actually argues that sociologists should take the side of the underdog. They should take the side of those who have the least amount of power. Because there is less known about these groups. There is their stories don't get told. Their issues don't get what's the word I'm looking for? Discussion that those in power get. So as a sociologist, it should be the case that sociologists take that side of the least powerful, of those who don't have the power to get their issues out there, because they have a platform to do that. Now, who they consider the underdog is again a value-laden decision. So for this approach, for the committed sociology approach, it isn't about just saying these are my values, these are the decisions that I've made. It's also about really being honest about that, not putting up a veil or a mask of neutrality when it's impossible to have one. And our final argument comes from Weber, and Weber argues that there are parts of sociological research that can be value-free, but there are also parts that can't. And again, it is about accepting that distinction. So he says that then a sociologist has to clearly make a distinction between facts and social facts and value judgments. And he argues a fact can be proven or disproven by evidence, whereas a value judgment can't. So when a sociologist is conducting their research or designing their research, they need to make it clear where they are being factual and where they are being value judgments, or where there is being value judgment. Sorry, that grammar was really bad. So he argues that certain areas cannot be value free. Your choice of topic, your choice of methodology, and when you're analysing your data, these are areas where you simply cannot be value free. When it comes to your topic, your values play an important role in selecting what you're going to research. It's a reflection of what the sociologist feels is important. And again, that is going to be a reflection of their values. The methodological choices that they make. Why have they chosen one particular research method over another? Why have they chosen a particular data type over another? That again is going to come down to their values, positivism versus interpretivism again. And the interpretation of data, the data analysis. Weber argues that facts need to have a theoretical framework so it's possible to see their significance and to be able to draw conclusions. But when you're looking at data, even quantitative data, then you decide whether or not the correlation is a strong correlation or a weak correlation or just a correlation. The researcher is deciding whether or not any of the data sets that they've got are anonymous, are out of the ordinary, I can't say that other word, and therefore will be ignored within the data set. In qualitative data, the meaning can be open to interpretation and what it is that they actually mean by what they're saying. And so these areas, a sociologist cannot even pretend to be value free because they're all based on value judgments. However, Weber does argue that when you are collecting your data, it is at that point that you need to be value free. Okay? Weber argues that data collection should be objective and unbiased. The questions asked should not be leading, and the researchers should not aim to get the respondents to answer in any particular way that reflects their own ideas. So they should aim to reduce as much as possible the demand characteristics and the social desirability. He states that a hypothesis must stand or fall solely on whether or not it fits the observable facts. So the facts should prove or disprove the hypothesis. The hypothesis shouldn't shape the facts of the data that is collected. So a researcher shouldn't ignore data just because it doesn't fit with their hypothesis, should they have one. Instead, they should collect all the data and collect it neutrally and objectively to then state whether or not their hypothesis, if they have one, has been proven or disproven. So for Weber, he kind of sits in the middle of this debate and kind of says, well, value freedom when you're doing your data collection, yes please, but let's be honest, when it comes to our topic, our method and our data analysis, our values are going to come into it. Okay, so that leaves us with that key question. Is it possible to be value-free in sociological research? Positivists say yes. Committed sociologists and value-laden sociologists say no. And Weber sits in the middle and kind of on the fence and kind of goes, well, maybe. In your exam, an essay question will be similar to this. It will be a variation on a theme. So you need to learn the different arguments, you need to understand the different arguments and how they can be used to back up and also criticise each other.